Hello, Booktube! A video that's been a year in the making, and hopefully maybe won't be a year in the editing. It's my 2020 books video, where I do a kind of a little bit of a review of books in my books in 2020. It was a tough reading year because of, hey, this little thing called the pandemic kind of definitely mucked about, and there is that theme in some of the stuff, but surprisingly I seem to have gotten through an okay number of books for the year. I won't bother you with numbers because I doubt if I have an accurate number anyways. So I've got a couple of categories here that I'm just going to run through to try and kind of squash myself down. I've got the most forgotten books, the least liked books, the books I most wished that I had actually reviewed at the time I read it, and because I didn't review it then, I'm probably not actually going to review it now. My favorite books, a brief discussion about series, because I did a couple of series, some of which I reviewed over extensively, and some of which I didn't review at all. And then I will finish that up with the top 3 books of my reading year on a completely subjective scale, which, of course, it's BookTube. Everything is subjective, except if you're Steve, in which case you're just objectively correct. So yeah, okay, let's start off the categories. Let's start off good, negative, least liked books. Least liked books in no particular order. Zombie Fallout. Actually, speaking of Steve Donoghue, he was talking about this series by Mark Tufo, and I picked up the first one in the series, and I found it cram full of kind of macho bullshit and some fairly glaring kind of point of view errors, what I thought were errors, and just the kind of the macho bullshit just sort of outweighed sort of some of the fun bits of it. In the end, it was just like, okay, I read one and I don't want to read any more of that. Number 2 was the Space Adventures of Kirk Sandblaster, which actually I heard on Dane Cobain's channel. This is not me dissing these guys, because, hey, they've actually steered me really well in years past and in other bits of this section, but, sometimes things just don't hit. For the Space Adventures of Kirk Sandblaster, it is a Douglas Adams Hitchhikers to the Guide to the Galaxy pastiche, a kind of it's a spacefaring comedy where Ollie Jacobs has definitely read Douglas Adams' more seminal work, and doesn't really do it that well. It's pretty choppy, and what is there is definitely just sort of a faded carbon copy of Douglas Adams. So yeah, just not my thing. The third and final one that'll inflict my negativity on this world is Black Mesa, number 14 in the Ranger series by Ralph Cotton. It is a Western, definitely Western true and true, where Arizona Ranger Sam Burrough goes on what kind of amounts to an hour of television adventure. That in itself is fine, but it was just like, even for an hour of television, it would have been completely by the numbers, unsurprising. Like it had just had one of those plots where it did not veer off of what you expected to happened, and I just found that so boring. I think I picked this up in the library audiobook stuff, and it was just like, it was very competently done. Unlike Jacobs and Tufo, this is a pro. This is a guy who has been writing for a long time, knows what he wants to do. Maybe it's also I'm just not a part. In science fiction, it's like, oh, it could be a tried and true plot, and I'll enjoy it because I love science fiction. For Westerns, I probably was. I don't have that built-in affection for it. Therefore, I found it really boring and really disappointing. So yeah, that is my least liked books of 2020. I don't think I had any hated books. I just least liked. Most forgotten books. This is the category when I look back and go, oh, I can't remember anything about that. So I'll be pretty light on my summaries here. This isn't to say they're bad books, they're just they weren't memorable books to me. For me, I've got two. I've got The Changeling by Victor LaValle. A kind of an urban it's urban fantasy in the sense it's kind of our real world, or maybe it's because we go a little bit more literary. It's magic realism, but we'll just call it urban fantasy, which kind of has a mixture of kind of examination of kind of racial politics, also with men's rights. I don't know if I actually found that it actually, and mixing it with the kind of the idea of the changeling, the child switched at birth, the uncanny child. I don't think I found it that it particularly gelled. And I guess maybe one of the signs I don't feel like it particularly gelled is I can't remember it at all. And One Native Life, which is a nonfiction kind of autobiographical work by Richard Wagamese, a native Canadian writer. These are all kind of like short little pieces put together. I think I heard about it from Shawn the Book Maniac. Got a theme here of dissing books that other booktubers have said, wow, I love this book. I found after a while, because they're such short pieces, I found that he actually kind of reminded me of, if you're a certain age, of Andy Rooney, who was a commentator, I think, on 60 Minutes. And he would do these little video essays. And at the end, he'd have like a pithy one-liner of like, that would sum everything up in a little moral. And well, I don't know if it's quite as pat. I did start to find that formula kind of shining through, because you had so many of these multiple little essays all the way through. There was some stuff that was like really interesting about Richard Wagamese's life. Someone who definitely kind of, as a native person in Canada, started off really hard and actually kind of, was able to kind of overcome this and become a successful author, become, someone who's like, highly respected. But I just found that there was a certain kind of a tone, and there's a certain kind of a dad tone of like, you kids today, this is what you should do, kind of like that sort of thing. It did not. I've sort of, I remember the stuff I didn't like, and I've sort of forgotten a lot of the kind of the positive things. There were positive things there, but it's slipping away. It's slipping away. So, okay. And then the books that I actually really did like, and I wish that I had reviewed, in 2020, but for whatever reason I didn't. There's actually a good hunk of books, actually in my reading that I never got to a review for, just because probably mentally I was just not there for 2020. The ones that come up are LaRose by Louise Erdrich, Native American author. This one set on a North Dakota reservation, where at the very opening of the book, a child is accidentally shot and killed. And kind of the solution that it comes up with is that the child of from the family of the shooter goes to the family who is really broken up, really messed up, to kind of try and affect some kind of a healing, and that's LaRose. And Erdrich does a thing of also kind of skipping back in time to all the other LaRoses in this family, kind of giving you kind of just a really rich portrait of these people, of this world, of the kind of the history, doing that thing that I think really great literature can do, which is like make you actually immerse you in this world and really get a good sense. And I was really struck by, there's characters in this book that start off you think are quite despicable, but as you go along, it's like, oh, you get to know them, and like, their actions haven't changed, but your understandings are deepened. It's like that was a real highlight, and one that I wish I'd reviewed at the time. And another one that I wish I had reviewed this year is Broken Slate by Kelly Jennings. This is a reread for me, which makes it doubly frustrating that I did not actually get to review it. It's 2010, very indie novel, where it's set in the very far future on this planet called Planet Julian, which is very much set up on a kind of a Roman kind of a Roman system where we follow Martin Eduardo, who at the age of 14 was enslaved by this culture. His family was flying around, so is enslaved, and this is a very hard-hitting, brutal book on the kind of the nature of slavery. Martin ends up in relationships with various lords, males in this thing, and has these really kind of twisted, terrible dysfunctional power dynamics with these lords, and it's a really good. It's a really good portrait of a society that is twisted by this contract system, this slavery system, and how it is brutalized and twisted both the enslaved and the slavers of this society. It's less of a kind of a plot as it is kind of a character study that way. Jennings has come out with another book, which I probably didn't write down, but I'll put right here, which is actually, it takes place further in the future, different characters yet again. And I was sort of waiting for that book to come out, and it actually has come out. So now that I've reread Broken Slate, I'm looking forward to reading the next book in this series. Even though it is one of these series that it is so hard, brutal to read, that afterwards you feel kind of that shaken, that kind of sullied by it. That it probably did take me that long to come back and reread it again, but it's disturbing, and it should be disturbing. So yeah, that's Broken Slate. The final one, we'll go with The Hill of Dreams by Arthur Machen. I did The Great God of Pan a while ago, and this one is kind of delves into the same kind of pagan unconsciousness stuff. This one is actually semi-autobiographical. It was published in 1907 and shows a writer who kind of gets exposed to kind of pagan visions at this Roman fort. And it seems to be like a road not traveled by Machen, of somebody who kind of descends into further and further kind of visions and delusions and self-isolations. It's got that just kind of the dripping with kind of atmosphere and kind of clotted prose. It's like one of those things, if you're going to have to kind of enjoy that kind of thing to get into that. If you're like your clean minimalist prose, do not try. Arthur Machen is not the dude for you. So yeah, that is probably my most wished I'd reviewed novels of the thing. I was going to pick like what was my favorite review, or the one that was like I had the most fun doing this thing, not most successful. And I think that was probably during ShakeTube when I did Venus and Adonis, which it's one of Shakespeare's long poems. It's problematic, as the kids say, with its views on kind of I don't know if you courtly love, romance, a lot of non-consensual stuff going on in this poem. A lot of horrible kind of power dynamics going on in this poem. I love kind of getting in and kind of really digging into that poem. And I also loved the conversation that I got kind of from that, Ros Scallydandling about the books and others, just like kind of having a discussion about this work. It was like, that whole experience makes that my most favorite review of the year for myself. I did a heck of a lot of series during 2020. This is 10 books of the Barsoom novels of Edgar Rice Burroughs, a science fiction fantasy planetary romance on Mars, with adding a movie and Gulliver of Mars, and I'm still reading at the moment Journey to Mars by Gustavus W. Pope, a exposition heavy book, which I'm wading my way through at the moment. It's starting out with kind of a trilogy of John Carter at the beginning, with Princess of Mars, Gods of Mars, and Warlord of Mars. Probably, I think one of my favorite of the series has got to be kind of the Mastermind of Mars, Synthetic Men of Mars bit of it with Thova. what's the hell, Razthava, mad scientists swapping bodies, but also in synthetic men of Mars, there being a vat of that he would grow men, thus synthetic men of Mars, and indeed swap one of the hero getting swapped into this horribly ugly, deformed dude's face for that. And also just a vat of organic matter that's spreading out, and is in danger of like engulfing the entire planet. It was just like such a fun series, such a fun series. I might at some point come back and do number 11, which is really the only Edgar Rice content in there is like one story in there is actual Edgar Rice Burroughs. I might come back to that, but it seems like such an afterthought. I don't know. My other big series that I talked about again and again on the thing was the Standalone Trollops, which this is the Lonely Trollop series, which is a creation of Steve Donoghue. Steve Donoghue started off this series of Lonely Trollops and went for a good bit of the year. I think there was like The Way We Live Now, American Senator, Claverings, and Mr. Scarborough's Family. I all kind of read along with Steve and all of us, all the Donoghueites. And really enjoyed that, but he kind of bowed out at that point, and I continued on. I wanted a whole year of Trollope novels. So The Editor's Tale, Cousin Henry, Mrs. Mackenzie, He Knew He Was Right, Lady Anna, and Orley Farm. It was just such a joy to kind of immerse myself in Anthony Trollope, very different writer than Edgar Rice Burroughs. Big chunker novels, stately in a way, always kind of humanistic, always never looking for the cheap action plot stuff or anything like that. Mr. Scarborough's Family, I kind of grin at that now, thinking about Mr. Scarborough and his kind of fiendish little plots to stymie the laws of entailment of inheritance and poor creditors and stuff like that. Creditors, kind of painted in kind of semi-racist ways, but that's also what you get when you're reading a Victorian novelist of that century. So another fun. Those are my big series. Also in there some ones that I did not review. There's the Alona Andrews, which is a husband and wife team combined to be Alona Andrews. Her Hidden Legacy series, of which I read 4 of the novels of this kind of alternative world, urban fantasy world, where there's magic. Where there's magic in this thing from a super serum that was created in the 19th century, but it's all about the romance. And we have 3 sisters in this family. Nevada Baylor, who has in the first 3 books has got this romance with Connor Mad Rogan, and in the second bit of the series now we're getting Katrina with Alessandro, the sexy Italian prime. It's a fun magical world, but it's mostly about romance. In some ways, this series is sort of reminding me of it's the female version of Edgar Rice Burroughs of like, yes, there's adventure and stuff like that, but there's also the romance. Though actually Edgar Rice Burroughs is also it's always about rescuing the princess, though in a much more chaste manner, a manner that is early 20th century versus kind of hot and sexy of the 21st century. Good Lord. So yeah, there was that. I read a couple of Jim Butcher books. I think I actually reviewed one, Skin Games, and then the next 2 I didn't review. They were Peace Talks and Stormfront, which are basically one book put together. One's all set up and one's all battle. Also fun junk, urban fantasy with Harry Dresden, the sorcerer, a former kind of hard-boiled detective wizard. But he's grown and grown, and now we're getting world. The Titan is attacking, and there's all this sort of battles and stuff like that. I don't take the series, I think, as seriously as some, and I'm there for the fun. I'm there for Butters and his lightsaber and stuff like that. So yeah, fun series. I can see why I probably didn't review it, because I think it's numbers 16 and 17 in the series, and it's like, okay, fine. Ooh. Talking about series, that's something that I wish maybe I had reviewed. I also read Joe Abercrombie's The First Law trilogy, Before They Were Hanged, The Last Argument of Kings, and something else in there. Another one, all three, 1, 2, 3, of the series. A really, really good, a really tight kind of fantasy series, mostly kind of sword and sorcery, but kind of treading on high fantasy. Very much kind of like a comment on stuff like Conan, hero or serial killer, because Logan is the Bloody Nine, definitely serial killer. The magician in this book, is the wizard in this book, is like, okay, if you were an immortal being, how would you actually view mortals? You would probably view him like this guy does, and you'd probably be as scary as this guy. None of this hands off, I'm only here to nudge things in directions of kind of Gandalf. But I think the thing that, there is all that commentary, but actually the thing that makes it not just a derivative Tolkien knockoff is that this is, it's the combination of, we've got kind of Conan in here, we've got Lord of the Rings in here, we've got the grim dark, I guess, George R. R. Martin and other folks like him who are very much kind of going for the earthy, gritty, kind of psychologically realistic, with kind of real politic happening in here. But it is such a tight series. It is only, okay, brace yourselves. It's a fantasy series. It's only 3 books, and it tells a complete story. I mean, I know Joe Abercrombie is maybe doing another series in this, but this First Law trilogy, it is 3 books, and it tells a story, and there are no gigantic long digressions. This is all killer, not just Logan Ninefingers, all killer and no filler. So if you're looking for kind of grim, dark, not actually with, okay, don't quote me on this, but I actually don't think there's actually that much violence towards women in it, because sometimes, unfortunately, grim dark means, well, if we want to show that we're realistic, we're going to show women being sexually assaulted in these books. There's actually not a tremendous amount of that. There is a tremendous amount of talk about torture. There's a tremendous talk about kind of the consequences of living a horribly violent lifestyle. I think someone like Logan Ninefingers, who is sort of a Conan in a way, is kind of a good thing of like, yeah, if you survive long enough being kind of a Conan figure, you are despised by enemies and friends alike, and they all fear you, and they're not wrong. You find out as you go along in this series. I'm really, really thrilled to have finally gotten around to Joe Abercrombie. I'd heard a lot about him, but I was like, oh, grimdark. But like, wow, 3 books that tell one complete story. I can't enthuse so much about that. Usually it's 3 books. Like for Brandon Sanderson, that's just him clearing his throat to start his 17-book series or whatever the hell it is. So yeah, okay. Let me go on to my top 3 books, though we'll get some other stuff back in here. We'll come back in here. My top 3 books of the year, I think, looking back. What did I enjoy the most? What were my top reading experiences? Sometimes this won't mean that they're maybe the best books ever, but they're the top 3 books to me. I think I'll start off with number 1, which is Clearing the Plains, which happily has a connection to another booktuber where I'm not shitting on them. Sorry, everybody. I did a buddy read with Shawn the Book Maniac of Clearing the Plains, which is a nonfiction book talking about there's a lot of background in it, but basically the crux of the book is how the Canadian government starved through policies of starvation, cleared the Canadian plains for the opening up of Canada, for the creation of Canada. How they dishonored treaties, and they starved Native people out of the plains onto reserves. And I think this is just like, it's an important book to me, just as it was just such a solid bit of scholarship with the evidence. Not always the best. Like, as a book, Dasychuk isn't like the greatest in the way of a storyteller, which I think is actually an important thing in is as important a thing in nonfiction as it is in fiction, because if you can't carry a reader along. But I think that just the sheer power of the material carries the book along, and made it so important to me, really kind of shaping my conception of my country, the country that I live in, and just what actions my life and the lives of everyone around me are based upon, some on reprehensible policies and actions by my government, my representatives. People say, "Oh, that was a generation ago. I'm not responsible for that." It's like bullshit. If you are a citizen of a country, you are responsible for what your government does, and you need to know about that, and you need to act on that. And so, yeah, that was definitely one of my top reads. The second book, to change subjects very quickly, and I just reviewed this on this channel, is Harriet the Spy. It is a children's book following Harriet M. Welsh, a budding writer who writes down everything about all the people around her in very brutal, 100% truth, but with no, not much in the way of, not in the way of consequences, but also maybe lacking a little in the way of empathy towards these people. It's the cold view from above. And that book gets discovered, and her friends are not happy with her. And, and it's at a time when her nanny, old Golly, has actually left her. So she doesn't have that support, and she's got to kind of work this stuff out on her own. And this was a reread for me, read because I was reading Sometimes You Have to Lie, which is a biography of Louise Fitzhugh, a book that posits exactly how radical this lesbian author was in her worldview, and how she was able to slip what are very kind of helpful, but could be potentially seen as subversive ideas into her children's book, in an artistic way, in a way that you're never thinking, this is somebody who is preaching to me, trying to tell me this is what you should do, kid. This is like, no, it's like, hey kid, life is fucking hard, and you need to get all the information you can, and that look around and see how the many ways to live. Really, I found it really important. It was a really important book for me when I was 11, which may influence that when I reread it, I found this book equally as important and powerful to me now. So that I have to put that down as one of my top books of the year. And number 3, oh my God, I can actually reach around and pick it up, is I'm going to pick one of the other series that I read this year, was the Hilary Mantel's Thomas Cromwell series. This was a series where I'd read Wolf Hall a couple of years ago and hadn't really got it, and I was kind of uncertain about whether Mantell was playing fast and loose with history. So I also read Darmot McCulloch's biography of Thomas Cromwell as sort of along with it, to sort of check on the history, make sure that Mantell wasn't changing things to suit her agenda. And it's like, wow, no, she was not. Now, that said, one of the things about coming back to Wolf Hall this time and coming back to the rest of the series is, like, I realized, but we are deeply, deeply immersed in Thomas Cromwell's point of view reading these novels. And I think that's something that I had a better sense of, and a better thought about as I went along, and actually made it a deeper and richer experience to me. And it kind of set aside those, he's really being portrayed positively. It was like, yes, of course he's being portrayed positively, because he's the hero of his own story. Or if not the hero of his own story, he's got all this internal stuff that he understands that color his actions. So for me, though I really love Wolf Hall, I would have to say it's the second novel in the series, Bring Up the Bodies, that I that I thought, whereas Mantell really hit it for me, really going into, it's not a story, because like a lot of the stuff about Tudor stuff doesn't interest me because it's kings and queens, and it's just not, I'm not a king, I'm not a queen. No, Shawn might be a queen, but I'm not. No, he's an empress. Sorry, he's the empress of Bales. But Thomas Cromwell is a guy from nowhere, nothing, who is dug, who has clawed his way up anyway by any means necessary, and I think while Wolf Hall kind of sets up, this is from Thomas Cromwell's point of view. I felt like Bring Up the Bodies, where it's like, oh, this is the book where you start to realize, yes, this is Thomas Cromwell's point of view, but you start seeing more and more cracks of how terrible of a person who's done so many terrible things is behind that mask of Thomas Cromwell, that facade, that thing of the family man who will bring people home to torture. Yeah. And there is, I had troubles with the third book, The Mirror and the Light. There is a readathon going on this year for the Cromwell series, where they're actually also going to be reading Darmot McCullough's biography, which I totally definitely go for. It's very thorough, but it's also, if you're into that kind of thoroughness, you might enjoy it, and you might just have to plow through it a little quicker. Yeah, they're doing a readathon of this, and they're taking a whole year. So who knows? Maybe by the end of the year, I'll actually want to reread this in 2021. Don't quote me on that, but this is a book that I got bogged down in just as the pandemic was happening. It was erupting at the first in March. And so I read it at a very slow pace. I felt like there were parts of it that didn't feel as digested, or I just felt like, oh God, we're doing this again. And I lost the energy, or the book felt overstuffed for me and interfered with me. Because I had so much trouble with Wolf Hall the first time, I am very tempted to join this readathon. It's #Cromwell, and I saw it over at Kim at Middle of the Book March. So maybe, hey Jason, want to do a reread? You probably already have the book, so you don't have to buy it. That is Jason at Old Blues Chapter and Verse, who was the great host of Cromwellathon in 2020. So yeah. So yeah, Bring Up the Bodies. The rare book that I actually have a physical copy of that I can hold up was my last of my top 3 books of 2020. So that is going to be a hell of a lot of minutes on 2020. I will leave it there. I hope you guys had, as far as books go, a good 2020. What were your favorite books of the year? What were the books that, not even if it's the best book, it's like, what book? Just that, the book that had you. What's that book? And other than that, my plan in 2021 is to read books. That's my big plan. So I even guys slipped in my plan video, my goal video for 2021 at the same time. That, and probably try and review more. All right, more videos later.